Hey there guys, this is Jack over at Hi Red Bird, and today's video is a discussion between me and Robin Sullivan, co-owner of the Leather Elves and acclaimed enrichment specialist. Now, if you are not aware, we have been doing live streams covering a multitude of animal care topics over on the Leather Elves Facebook page. So if you guys haven't already, you want to make sure that you go and you like the Leather Elves Facebook page so that you can participate in those discussions, which are happening every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Of course, we are also going to put all of those discussions here on the Hi Red Bird YouTube channel. So if you guys like these discussions, you want to make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and without further ado, let's jump into this discussion on encouraging foraging. This video covers what foraging is, why it's important, and a variety of ways that you can incorporate it into your daily routine. So I certainly hope you guys enjoy this.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan from the Leather Elves, and this is Jack Pine from Hi Red Bird. So guys, it's been a good week. Tonight we're talking about encouraging foraging. So that's a hot topic. Everybody's always excited about it. And just so you know, at the end of tonight's session, we're going to have a little bit of trivia, and we're going to give away I don't know, something. Should I tell you? I don't know. Maybe I'll make you forage for the answer. I don't know. But the topic is foraging, so take that as you will. So how's it going, Jack?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's been a crazy week, and it snows every day here in New Hampshire, so I'm just kind of holding my own. But so foraging, foraging it's been the hot topic for as long as I can remember. And so that's kind of why we decided to do it. So here's the big question, Jack, why bother? Why bother to forage?
So, foraging is one of the coolest things you're going to see your birds do. Realistically, birds in the wild are going to spend the majority of time that they are awake foraging for food. It is the most natural behavior that you are going to see. So if you have an animal that you want to interact with and you want them to be mentally stimulated, it's going to be a great activity for that. If you have an animal that you want to see how they would act in the wild, it's going to be a great activity for that. Foraging is just all around incredible.
And I think too, it's one of the easiest behaviors to replicate in human care. We talk all the time about we want to have naturalistic behaviors and we're trying to elicit that natural behavior. And foraging has to be the easiest one to do. It's a matter, I think, of being creative and being willing to try different things and not being scared of, is this really a foraging device? Is this something that's going to work for foraging? Jack and I, we've talked, right, Jack, about it's not magical. There's nothing magical about foraging as far as creating it.
Yeah, for you as a bird owner or you as an animal caretaker, there is no prohibitive barrier that's going to keep you from encouraging foraging as a behavior. The reason that I think so many people think of foraging as magical is because it really can have a profound difference on the life and the well-being of your animals. But it really is one of those things that just because it is so amazing, just because it accomplishes so many things, it's not rocket surgery. You can definitely do this easily, painlessly, and as a regular part of your day.
Absolutely. And I think, coming from a zoo background, it's a matter of, it's something that zoos have been doing for years. It's something that, it increases visibility in a zoo setting. You can offer a foraging activity and it gets your animals moving, it gets them out. And isn't that kind of what we want too in the pet community? We want our animals working. We want them moving around. And this is an easy way to do it. People are always saying, "Oh, I've got a perch potato. He's not doing anything. He's not going to forage. He won't get off that perch." Well, give him a reason to get off the perch. I mean, I don't get off the couch unless I have a reason. So why today? I mean, that's how I look at it. The other thing you touched on, Jack, behavior. I mean, you can change behavior so easily using foraging.
Yeah, I mean, how many people, this is probably a really good example for 2020. How many people are very, very familiar with, I'm going to sit on my couch and just scroll through my phone and I'm not getting anything meaningful or useful out of it, but it's something to do. A lot of times I feel like our parrots can be in the exact same situation. You start seeing stereotyped behaviors because the birds have nothing else to do. So encouraging foraging, which is arguably the most natural behavior that you will see them do, just provides them so much mental stimulation that, you can elicit so many other natural behaviors because they feel like themselves. That's definitely something I am looking forward to. As we move past 2020, as I get the opportunity to go out and, forage with my friends at a bar for cocktails. Like,
It's so true. I mean, who doesn't like to forage for cocktails? Our birds don't like to forage for cocktails. But, I noticed that
mm,
Melissa Davis suggested that it's vital. And you're absolutely right, Melissa. I think it's something that it should be in everybody's repertoire. It should be, not something that's an add on, not something that, oh, when I get to it. Foraging is something that you can do. And it'll make your life easier too. We did the talk or the session about better living through training. And I think this is the same kind of deal. Better living through foraging. It's a matter of, how do I get, so my bird's plucking. Well, okay, so we got to rule out medical, but then let's talk about, maybe I can get them to forage, and instead of spending so much time over preening, the bird's going to be spending time foraging. If a bird is, biting, if you've got a bird that's doing a lot of biting, okay, if they're moving around foraging, you're not interacting that closely and they can stop some of that biting behavior. I find that I always suggest foraging when I'm talking to people about how to change bad behavior. It depends what you call bad behavior, but it's an easy way to replace those aberrant behaviors and make things more positive.
right, because I think an important thing to remember a lot of times as, a behavioral consultant or anyone who works with animals, I can guarantee you right now, if you work with animals regularly, everyone is going to approach you with, how do I fix this? How do I do this? And one of the biggest things you'll see is people asking things like, how do I get my bird to stop doing this? And you don't really get them to not do something. The question is, what do you want them to do instead? You have to have a positive approach there. What behavior are we aiming for? Not what are we just trying to avoid, because you can't really guarantee what's going to take its place if you go that route. So
Right.
foraging is an excellent behavior to just sort of encourage things. And I realize we're like 10 minutes into this, but I'm like, have we completely just defined foraging?
I don't think so. And I think it's, people it can be off-putting for some people that, oh, it's foraging. I don't know if I can do that. I can give them a toy. I can, put stuff in their bowl, but I don't know if I can do foraging. And it's a matter of, foraging at its most basic level is defined as making a search for food or gathering food. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that. And I think as avian professionals, we can even take it to the next step where we're talking about foraging for a toy. I know Melissa Davis does this. Melissa and I have talked about it. Melissa puts a bunch of toys in a bucket or in a basket for Zorro, and he goes through those toys. A lot of people are doing this. I think it's a great idea. And it's a form of foraging, but foraging again. So I was going to give you a hard time about this later on, Jack, but Diane Hyde did point out that you called it rocket surgery. I don't know if that's a new part of the space program or what, but it's not rocket science. There, it's an easy thing to do.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now, it's not rocket surgery is my favorite metaphor, which is the official name for when you combine metaphors into something that is not how it was initially meant, but can be used in the same or a similar way, as long as you don't think about it too hard. So for an example, there's we'll cross that bridge when we come to that, or don't burn your bridges. So you can combine that to we'll burn that bridge when we get to that, which honestly some of the decisions I've made, but it is a thing.
And you guys thought you might not learn it tonight. Okay, I'm pretty excited about this. I just learned something. See, it's an ongoing process. Taylor says it's not brain surgery. What the whole like talking online thing is not brain surgery? I'm not sure. Patricia brings up a really good point. Normal behavior gives them choice rather than engaging in an abnormal displacement behavior. I love that you put it that way, Patricia, because next week we're going to talk about some language of training, and that's wonderful, wonderful information. And it's true. We talk too about making sure that our birds have choices and not just birds. People bring up different things. Melissa's brought up that you could use it with cats, and we've got some video too that we're going to show later on that shows you that foraging works for any kind of animal. I mean, I've used it in the past for a lot of other species, and I know Jack has as well. And so it's just a great option. It's allowing them choice. It's allowing them to work for their food. I know 1,000 times I've told you guys contra freeloading, my favorite, long word, contra freeloading, that animals prefer to work for their food rather than just being given it in a bowl. For those of you who are on Facebook in the different groups, you'll see a lot of times when people are having problems, I'll suggest, have you tried doing foraging activities? One of my favorites, and I wish I had like a quarter for every time someone says this, my bird's throwing the bowl out of the cage, right? Has anybody had that? Jack, have you ever? Okay. My bird's throwing the bowl out of the cage. My bird's throwing the food on the ground. Okay, so let's try to talk about that. So you can use that foraging to stop the behavior that's making you crazy, right? It's the bird's having fun, and he's probably eating the food he wants out before he dumps it, but it's making you crazy because you're watching this happen. It's probably making a lot of noise while you're trying to work from home, and now the food's on the floor. So why not offer it in foraging?
Well, and technically, you could make the argument that you are providing a foraging toy in a bowl like that, whether or not you put the forethought into it, if your bird views it that way. So if you have a bird that absolutely hates apples, but you want to include those in your bird's diet, and there's a bunch of other things in the bowl that your bird wants to get to underneath the apples, of course, the bird's going to shred the apples, throw them out of the way. They're moving those things out of the way to get to the foods that they really, really like. So even though you didn't plan it, you still offered a foraging opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Terry, thanks, Terry. Terry brings up a really good point. She uses Foraging Freddy for her babies to learn balance while they're finding food. That's something we don't think about. So if, the parents aren't there to do that, or you've got babies that you're raising, or maybe you've got a bird that has some issues. So while they're balancing, they're learning that balance skill. They're finding food at the same time. And then the other point that Terry makes is it only takes one to find something, and they're all looking. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a little while, but it's so very true. They will do their flock animals. They'll do what other ones are doing. So her bird doesn't throw her bowl, but she loves to throw chop to create. Well, Tracy's, you're getting artwork out of that. That's important. And maybe she's telling you she doesn't like the chop. I don't know. At least my husband and dad don't throw the broccoli, but I don't know. I think it's true. You might
Well,
want
and
to
if you found the
consider,
right market for that, you might make good money.
right? I mean, zoos have been doing it for years, Tracy. They've been like selling animal art. They get the animals to paint. And I think, Jack, aren't you going to work on some painting with widget?
Yeah, that is, last week we were going over goals, and oh my God, was that really just a week ago?
Yeah.
And my goal for the year is to teach my brand new green sheet conure how to paint. So yeah, you could just have an artistic opportunity there. It's all about finding the positives, which
Right.
sometimes you have to work for.
It's true. Jack and I have been working on that, both of us. We decided we're going to be more positive in 2021. And it doesn't always work, but we're trying. So yeah. So thank you guys for making us feel a little bit more positive. Okay. So I think so we were talking about different animals that this worked with. Nick, do we have a clip of a canine species doing a little bit of foraging? Oh, wait. So that's the cat. So sometimes it doesn't work. The cat was, I got to admit. So I offered our cat a foraging puzzle, and she was like, yeah, no. Yeah, what? I'll just go over here and you'll just give me a treat. So that's a piece of it too. So when you start doing foraging with your animals, you've got to remember that they don't always take right to it. And here's Gunner. So Gunner is Jack's dog, and Gunner seems to get it and is willing to do it.
Right. And I think an important thing for people to remember is, so if you have an instance like the cat where you presented a foraging toy, you probably spent good money on that foraging toy, and the cat said, no, thank you. That doesn't necessarily mean that the cat is going to dislike every foraging opportunity. It just disliked that one. So, you can try different things. It's still worthwhile.
And she's still like,
or
no.
not. Yeah, we tried again. Cat said no.
It's and it doesn't always have to be something you buy. We're going to talk some tonight about some DIY foraging things, and it's really about looking at how an animal forages in the wild. So clearly the cat is not going to expend that much energy. Gunner, on the other hand, is willing to just work for it. So if you want to think about how your birds forage in the wild, that's usually a good place to start, is with are they arboreal foragers? Are they ground foragers? So, it really makes a difference what that animal's doing in the wild. So Jack, I know, so budgies forage on the ground, cockatoos on the ground. What else can
Yeah,
you?
and I think,
Go ahead.
I mean, a lot of parrots, people have a hard time believing they will go down to the ground to look for food. Um, and like it's a natural behavior. It's the main feeding behavior for a lot of different parrot species, but others will do it too. And a lot of times that's one of the things you'll hear people say that, oh, my bird's going to the bottom of its cage. How do I stop this? And it's like, why? That's a thing your bird does. I don't necessarily think that's something you have to stop.
Exactly. I mean, there's this African gray right here on the screen is is foraging on the bottom, and that's a matter of grays will forage both arboreally and on the ground. And so when I was in Australia, I saw flocks of cockatoos foraging on the ground. It's a very natural behavior for them. And boxes are a simple way, to do some foraging and to get them to try different things. And boxes aren't necessarily big, scary items. They're just pretty basic, and there's boxes coming. I know there are at my house. Well, maybe not this week, but there are boxes coming and going, and they're used to seeing them in the house and seeing them around, and so it's not something necessarily super scary and new. So you want to research that when you're thinking about how you're going to present it, and you want to try different approaches. It doesn't always have to be rocket surgery.
Exactly.
Because they use empty graham cracker boxes as foraging hides, and that Debbie has parrot pockets. They've gotten years and miles out of her parrot pockets. So it's, there are definitely some good products out there for foraging, but you can also do a lot on your own as well. So Jack, we've talked about DIY, and
Yes.
one of the things that comes to mind with DIY is, I always tell people any toy can be a foraging toy. I mean, we've done this at Parrot Festival. It's always a challenge, and I'll ask people to challenge me to go and find any toy at Parrot Festival, and I will tell them how to turn it into a foraging toy. So it's not about, you don't necessarily have to go to the foraging section. You can make just about any toy into a foraging toy. So Jack and I want to challenge you guys this week. So we're going to have a contest, and the contest is going to run through next Thursday, so through the 14th. And if you post pictures of toys that you've modified, so they weren't originally thought of as foraging toys. So if you take toys that you've thought of as just, oh, I bought this toy, how do you convert it into a foraging toy, and then post a picture for us? And then Jack and I are going to get together in a top secret location and look at all the entries. Is that serious enough? We're going to look at all the entries and decide which one's our favorite. We're going to love them all, I'm sure, because you guys try so hard, and we really appreciate your effort. But we're going to take a look at them, and we're going to pick our favorite, and we will announce it on next week's live stream on the 15th. So
with a prize.
Jack, with a prize. There's always got to be prizes. Prizes are the best.
And there are some things that I'm not going to say this will skew your entry towards winning, but it might. If you guys have not already liked the Leather Elves page, so you make sure you don't miss out on any of the live streams, that could definitely help you out. And if we see that certain photos are getting a lot of attention, so if you, I don't know, share it with your friends so that they can go and like that picture, I'm not saying it's going to skew your entry towards a better chance of winning the prize, but it might.
It could. So people are posting great ideas. I love it. Terry said that she does nut butter smeared on a piece of kale with goodies stuck on it, rolled up, is a hit there. So Terry, I know Terry works really hard with the babies that she raises and does an incredible job. Her babies are beautiful. But Terry probably doesn't have a ton of free time. So something like this is something that Terry can do as part of a regular routine and put that in there. And that she's created a foraging activity. And then Karen Anderson, Karen said the carriers that beer 6-packs come in are big in Minnesota. Is that what she said? That's what Karen said if she were here. I personally use the coffee ones, Karen. I don't know, but so the 6-packs, the styrofoam, not styrofoam, but the Cardboard type carriers, they're awesome, for creating foraging activities. I always tell people, if you go get coffee for other people, which we can't do right now, but when you go back to work, and I'm telling you, when you go back to work, not if you go back to work, but when you go back to work, buy the coffee and then just keep the carrier.
Right. And so as we're talking about these things, I think it's time that we just put out the disclaimer that whenever you're putting together foraging toys for your bird, whenever you're putting together any toys for your bird, whenever you are providing any type of enrichment for your bird, it is important that you think about the safety and the well-being of your bird. And
Mhm.
also remember that even if other people do things that may or may not be safe for your bird. Because I'll be honest, when I saw that, I mean, it's little print and, it's also the end of the day for me. Karen posted the thing about, beer holders. And my first thought was, oh my God, who would give a plastic 6-pack ring to a bird? That's awful. And then you realize, no, she's talking about the cardboard ones. Oh yeah, no, that should be safe. Um, so you want to just make sure you're thinking about the safety and well-being, and you want to make sure that you're thinking it through, because even if someone gives you advice or instructions, if you don't think it through all the way, or if you're distracted and you're putting things together, you just don't want to give your bird anything that's not safe. Because I guarantee you, if I told Karen I saw that and I gave my birds, plastic 6-pack rings, she would say, "What's wrong with you?" Uh,
It's true. It's very true. And I think too, that brings up a good point, Jack. Hopefully you guys have come to know that Jack and I try to steer you in the right direction and you trust us. There are a lot of people on the internet and on Facebook who speak with great authority, and they are not necessarily people who have a lot of good experience. And so when you read something, read it, then think about it, and then do it. And it's true, Melissa. Not every toy is safe for every bird, and you know your bird's best. And so egg cartons are great, Bev. You're absolutely right. And you want to think about those things. So maybe it's not going to work in your house. It's not going to work in your aviary, and that's okay. It's just a matter of assessing it, deciding whether it's safe, and then once you decide that it's safe, you still have to supervise. You still got to make sure that it's being used safely, because our birds are like these little Houdinis who do things that we don't really always expect, and you've got to be ready for those kind of things when they happen. So Jack, do you have? I know you have some DIY examples
yeah.
that you've been doing.
So
I Redbird.
yeah, in preparation of this week, I actually put together a variety of foraging toy videos, and I put them together on a playlist on the High Redbird channel. So if you just want to know more about foraging toys, you can go over there. But I did put together a really cool one this week, and I know we have some video clips of that too, because oh well, that's fun too. Uh, so this one right here is a puzzle feeder that I put together for. It was initially supposed to be for the pigs, but the pigs, instead of figuring out, it is a plastic container with a hole in it. You can roll it, and the air popped popcorn will fall out. The pig just decided, no, I'm going to try to destroy this. And he took too long with it, and eventually the goats came over, and the goats have no problem using this toy, rolling it to get the popcorn to fall out. Um, and so another thing to keep in mind here is, so I made this toy for the pigs, the goats. I made another toy that was basically the same thing, but on a much larger scale for our camels. So if you see a toy and you know that that toy itself is not safe for your individual bird, there is still probably a way that you can take the idea behind that toy and make it safe for your animal.
You can scale it in size too. I mean, people are like, oh, well, that's a macaw toy. It'll never work for my budgie, or vice versa. And you can definitely scale things up and down. I was working with a zoo, and they had a collection of Kias. And so Kias are super, super intelligent birds. They're very destructive as well. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the videos of the Kias, tearing windshield wipers off and things like that, and taking backpacks apart. And so what we tried to come up with different ways to keep them interested, keep them stimulated. And we took a PVC, just a PVC pipe. We put a cap, like a clean out on one end, a cap on the other, drilled holes in it, and then we gave it to the Kias just to see what they would do with it. Well, they had a little embankment in their enclosure, and they would take it to the top. So it was a pretty good sized piece of PVC, and they would work together as a flock. They would pull it up to the top of the hill, have it roll down the hill, pieces would fall out, and then they would get the pieces on the way down, and they would pull it up again and do it again until it was empty. So it kind of was cool because it showed again how intelligent they are and how they solved a problem. But it was a toy that I had designed years ago for big hoof stock. So it really, you can scale things.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we need to remind people at this time that like watching your animals interact with all of these foraging toys, like that to me is one of the most fun aspects of providing these various types of enrichment for your animals. Because not only do you get to see a different side of them, you get to see them mentally stimulated, engaged with their environment, but you get all of these incredible stories that you can then tell people about your animals too. Because like as Robin's telling that story, I'm just remembering I made a modified version of that toy you saw for the pig out of a 5-gallon bucket and gave it to our 2 camels, dromedary camels. And they cushed or went into a sitting position basically 10 feet apart from each other and rolled the toy back and forth to each other and just picked up the bits of food as they fell out. So I mean, there's so much intellect there in our animals that's so fun to see.
And it's kind of neat too when they do things that you don't expect. When they use it in different ways, that you're like, okay, I know how they're going to do this. I know how they're going to get to it. And it's really not always the way you expect. It can be, they use it in a different way. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was when you're offering foraging in the very beginning, you've got to compare the value of the foraged item with the amount of work that they have to put out. So we talk a lot about in the zoo field about activity budgets. What's in the wild, what's a bird spend or an animal spend most of their time on? Is it, roosting? Is it foraging? Is it playing? What are they doing when they're in the wild? Where is that the bulk of their time spent? And one of the things you've got to consider is if they're going to expend energy, it needs to be worth their while. And I have said this 1,000 times. Another thing that I want a quarter for every time I've said it is that if a foraging toy has 100 steps to it, and the thing that they're foraging for is a sunflower seed, I don't know if it's worth it. For some birds, it would be. For others, not so much. So you've got to think about what's the value of the item that you're asking them to forage for.
Right, and I think that's where your point of earlier when we were talking about, foraging for toys in foraging baskets or things like that, you need to remember that it's not necessarily always the size of the food item, but the perceived value of it. So if it's something that your animal really, really likes, even if it's a very small food item, they may still do that work. But if you give them a ton of something they don't really want, again, they're probably not going to do it, even though you gave them a lot of something.
Right. And along those same lines, if you expect them to forage all day, so say you set up their cage with foraging activities for the time when you need to go to the grocery store, which I know we're all spending less time at the grocery store these days, but while you're out, you want them to be busy. You want them to have something to do to keep them, from destroying something else. So if you set it up with foraging activities and you put a ton of stuff in the closest or the easiest, the most accessible foraging activity, well, are they going to really want to go on to that next option? Are they going to head for that next foraging activity? No, because they're going to be full, and it applies to training as well. It's like, so if they find this and they're like, yes, and they eat, the whole big pile of whatever you gave them, you can't really expect them to go find more if they're full. Um, so I think that's an important thing to think about. If you're going to do a lot of different foraging activities all at once, have small enough reinforcers, because the food that they get when they finish foraging is the reinforcer for that behavior. Make sure that it's not a ton of food in the first one. So Beth says that she likes giving her big macaws nuts for them to open and eat. They will gladly open up an almond or a pecan, but the Brazil nut is apparently too much trouble, not worth the effort. So, okay, so we're going to help you cheat with this one, Beth. Put a starter hole in the Brazil nut. Because once they figure out that they can get into that Brazil nut, they're pretty impressive, once you get them open. And I have all kinds of people tell me too that their birds won't open nuts. So her too likes pistachios. I like pistachios, and they're never too much work, except for those ones that you can't get open. So maybe that's back to Beth's Brazil nuts. If I can't get the nut open, then I just kind of put it aside and I leave it for the next guy who comes to the pistachio bowl. But if you drill a little starter hole in them, Beth, and that might help with that. People who tell me that their birds won't open nuts. So Jack, have you ever met a bird that absolutely will not open a nut?
So yes, I can say that I have. Mika, the umbrella cockatoo, which we've shown in a couple of videos, he can have a little bit of difficulty with nuts, and that's going to be because he has a scissor beak, so he has a little bit of difficulty getting them started. Now, one thing I like to do is I'll just take a pair of pliers and lightly crack one side. I don't even completely open it. It's just got a starter, stress line that the bird can then break into a little bit easier. And I found that with that, Mika can easily get into walnuts, pecans, almonds. I've been told that this bird for 28 years before I got him never really ate any sort of whole nuts. And now he does. He does all the time. So sometimes it just takes that little bit of help to teach a bird that there is a really good present in there or a really good prize in there. And sometimes in Mika's case, maybe they do just need a little bit more help.
Right. And, Melissa said that Zorro doesn't like to open things. Zorro has a better life than I do, Melissa. You take fantastic care of that bird. So I think we need to make Zorro work a little bit more. Maybe you try that, just crack it with a pair of pliers like Jack suggested. And, if Zorro really wants those nuts, he's going to kind of work at it a little bit. And he might be not so happy with you for a little bit, and not be, right there willing to hang out with you for a little while. But I think it might be worth trying just to give him something else to do, something to keep him busy. So Jack, what else? Do you have other DIY videos?
I do, and I know we have some clips of some DIY foraging toys that you can do for birds. Um, and I think it's really, really important to show that there's a wide array of different things that you can do for your birds. And when I say birds, I mean all birds. So I know a lot of us have parrots and we want to try to provide for them. But some of us will also have things like maybe chickens, game birds, waterfowl, ducks, and geese. And all of those can benefit from things as well. So here we have a video of peafowl using a DIY foraging feeder. And I did just put up an instructional tutorial on how to put these together. These are made out of either a head of lettuce or a piece of celery or a whole cluster of celery. Bundle, bunch. What is the collective term for a bunch of celery? A what?
A bunch.
A bunch.
It's
Okay,
not
that. A bunch of
rocket
celery.
surgery, Jack.
No, so these toys are just built with using the natural grooves in a head of lettuce or a bunch of celery. And you can put more desirable food items in there because usually for a lot of birds, the lettuce, the celery isn't the highest value treat. But adding other things. So I did bits of sweet pepper, bits of carrot. There were some small mixed seeds that were in there. And you can see those peafowl were very, very excited about those toys. And you can easily build something like that also for your companion parrots.
Definitely. And I think, if you can use a whole fruit or a whole food item and turn it into a foraging activity, it's kind of this big win because you don't have to worry about, oh my goodness, are they going to ingest part of it that they're not supposed to? Are they going to get a piece of plastic that is holding something and ingest that? I mean, that can be super dangerous. And so it's kind of a no-brainer to be able to use a food item as a foraging activity as well. It's great. Oh, so Lynn says artichokes work great for that too. That's a super, super suggestion. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. And Tracy had mentioned that chickens are coming for her in spring of 2021. So are they coming for you or they're coming for you? I hope they're coming for you. And so the chickens are so much fun, Tracy. They're great to train. They're great to do outreach with. Chickens are super underrated, and I think you're going to have a blast with your chickens. There's all kinds of stuff you can do for enrichment. That rolling toy that we talked about that was with the pigs and the goats. You could do one of those for chickens, and it's like an all day affair. It's great, and they are so much fun, and they are definitely wonderfully easy to train. So, Jack, any other DIY stuff, suggestions?
So there are a couple of super easy things that you can do. So right now, it's January here, so we're starting to get some leaf fall here. I'm sure that's a little bit different from where you are, Robin. But yeah, so we're starting to have a good amount of leaf litter. Honestly, we do have some years down on the Gulf Coast where all of our trees just keep their leaves through the winter. Be very jealous. But one of my favorite things to do when all the leaves are falling is to create browse piles. So I can just rake up all the leaves in an enclosure into a certain area and then hide different food items into there so that the animals have to work for it. And so here I have, this is Rupert. He is a Bennett's Wallaby, and he is currently searching for some small pieces of bread and some air-popped popcorn through this browse pile. And if you guys couldn't tell, air-popped popcorn was the enrichment item that most of the animals were getting this day. Now, if you don't have a ton of leaf litter, if it's a different time of year, you can always use things like shredded paper. Maybe you have access to hay. Hay could be a great option to manufacture a browse pile without leaf litter. But there's a lot of options to just create this. And you can see he's definitely interested in it, and he is looking for his food. He is searching for things, especially for an animal that can be a little more skittish about things. And wallabies do have a tendency to be a little bit skittish. This is one of those things that you see he's very confidently looking. He is very comfortable with his environment. So it's all great things to see.
Mm-hmm. And I think that brings up a really good point, Jack, that you don't want to offer a foraging activity to an animal that is not comfortable, because you're asking them to stop being kind of on the lookout for what's going on in their environment and to put their attention into foraging. So you've really got to make sure that your animal's kind of feeling okay about where they are before you ask them to do a foraging activity. This is something too with the leaf litter. We used to do a lot of this with birds of prey. So, birds of prey are not, they're not always as food motivated as our parrots or as some other species. But if you hide stuff in leaf litter for an owl or for a hawk, they're going to go down and find that. And it's kind of a neat behavior. And it really gets them, again, moving where they might not be moving in the first place. So, a lot of people will say to me, Jack, that their birds don't forage. They won't forage. And, my suggestion is there are a lot of different ways to get that to happen. One of my favorites, because it makes you look silly, is to do that model behavior where you're like, oh, look, it's in here, and, thank God most people don't have people watching them while they're interacting with their birds. You, on the other hand, because you're at the farm, you've got people watching you. But it's really a matter of, do you really care how silly you look? You just need to kind of show them how to do it. And I think the other thing that's important to remember when you're trying to encourage animals to forage is, if they've never been asked to do this before, if all the food has always been provided in a bowl, it is a new concept that you're going to have to teach them.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you have, you have a kid that, kind of got everything from their parents through, middle school, high school, and then they go off to college and they are exposed to the real world, and it's like, wait, I have to do things now. This is, at times it can be confusing, and at times for animals that haven't gotten that before, it can be like downright stressful. So again, like with everything else you do with your animals, it's always important that you just sort of observe those interactions and you develop your goal-based plan based on what you're observing. We're going to come back to
Mm-hmm.
goal-based things every single session this year.
It's true. And so the goal is to get them to forage. Why do you want to do that? Is it because you watched Jack and Robin on Friday night and they said you're supposed to get your bird foraging? Well, okay, that's not a good enough goal. Is it because it's a natural behavior and that's what you want to elicit? Great goal. Is it because it's your bird's over preening a little bit and you want them to spend more time doing other things? Great goal. Is your bird a little chubby? Oh, say it isn't so. Um, so for those of you that haven't gone to the vet this year for your wellness, your well bird check, you might have to think about this a little bit, because we've all been home and you're feeding that bird when you go by the cage or when he's on the play stand. So we might have some chunky monkeys out there. So now you're getting them moving. They've got to move to get that food. They're not just walking over to the bowl, plunking themselves on the perch and eating their food. So you want to think about that. What's your goal? Why do you want to do it? You can also train your bird to forage. Okay. It may be something that is completely foreign to this bird. Maybe it's, you have all your birds are foraging. Life is great. This is good. But you may have to show them. You may have to, if it's a toy that here's this. So this guy, clearly this is not an issue for him. He's looking for that food. Where is it? But then it's also fun to spin that wheel. That's a fruit salad that we make, but it's not just food. There's more to it. And that is, in actuality, it is a foraging activity. It may be something that they have to open the lid on, and maybe your bird doesn't know why. Okay, so if you offer them something that has a lid that comes off, okay, they may not know that there's anything in there. So this is Sarge. We all miss Sarge quite a bit. Sarge is no longer with us, but Sarge was a great forager. But in this case, it didn't work out the way Sarge anticipated. So he turned it into an auditory enrichment option. And that happens sometimes. And yeah, no, there was nothing in there. It was all gone. It had fallen on the floor. In some cases, Sarge would have gone down to the bottom. Maybe not, though. If you've got to take a top off, maybe you need to show the bird how to do that. Maybe you need to show the bird that there's food there in the first place. You've got to be like, hey, I'm putting this food item in here, and then you have to take the top off. Because if you hand your bird something like that cup that Sarge has, they may not know that it's that there's food in there. Okay, birds are very visual.
Yeah, the toy that I gave the pigs, you guys could see it was clear plastic. So it could be I create the exact same toy, but out of an opaque plastic that the animals can't see into, and maybe they're not going to have the same response. So, I feel like we're going to keep saying this again and again and again. But one thing Robin and I definitely recommend, if there's ever a behavior that you can't seem to understand what's going on with your animals, even if it's something like foraging, go ahead and record it and take a look at it, because it could be that every other aspect is perfect, but there's just one thing that's causing it to be a little bit off. So you can see all the animals in this video, they're all looking at the popcorn. They can see the popcorn, and that's how they go to get it out. There's only one hole drilled into that plastic, so there's only one spot where the popcorn's going to fall out, but they can see that it's there.
Absolutely. And I think, you want to talk about modeling that behavior, demonstrating that behavior, because again, it's not always clear. And if you're not sending a clear message to your animals, they may not know what you're asking them to do, which brings me to the point that it doesn't have to be a huge production to create a foraging item, to create a foraging activity. Melissa says here, start easy, wrap a treat in a cupcake paper. Super easy, but you know what? It's foraging. And I will tell you from experience in creating things for big mammals and things like that in facilities, and I know that Jack has probably experienced this as well, you can spend days creating enrichment opportunities, and some of your animals would just be like, yeah, no. Or they go through it in a second, and now you've spent hours and hours and hours, and it's gone in a second. There you go. Spend tons and she still doesn't want it. But you can, you offer these things, and they don't always have to be the high ticket item. They don't have to be the thing that you worked on for days. It can really be a matter of taking the cupcake paper, wrapping a treat up, and tossing it on the floor. Taking, something that's as simple as the boxes. Danny mentioned, he uses old graham cracker boxes, putting things in those. It doesn't have to be really difficult for you. And you can also, you can purchase toys, that there's no shame in that. It can be a toy that you've gone out and you've purchased. I know that Birdie Buddies, for example, Nyla out in Minnesota does an incredible job creating foraging toys that the birds absolutely love. And this is Nyla's bird, as a matter of fact, and it turns different ways. And it's not, it's not super difficult. It's not something that it's going to take the bird forever to understand, but all of it is something that the bird can chew up, can destroy, and forage on. So it's a multi-purpose item. And you can see, her bird's going at it there. And at the top, she's got a little DIY stuff. Nyla is wonderfully creative. But, she's got that plastic bottle on the top there, just adds another dimension. So maybe you buy a basic foraging item, you buy a basic foraging toy, something that's listed as a foraging toy, and you add to it. You add that next dimension to it, and that helps. And Jack, we've talked about small approximations, asking your bird to do in building. This is
Yeah, I
another
mean,
one from Nile.
oh,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, I was going to say one of the videos that I put together is if you have birds who have never foraged before in their life, it is showing you the process of how you can teach foraging because foraging is a natural behavior, but if your bird in its entire life has never had to look for food, if it always just expects it to show up in a food bowl, it may be something that you need to teach.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when birds come to us from a rescue situation, we don't know what their history was. We don't know if they were ever asked to forage or not. So to expect them to know how to do that right out of the gate is not always the way to go. You want to really think about, how do I teach this bird to do this? And it's not a difficult behavior, and they will up on it quickly. It's just a matter of how you're introducing it. You start small. You start with the cupcake paper. You start with, the piece of paper like this, just a piece of paper towel, and then you build on up. You build up to the thing that has to be opened up. You build up to the more difficult puzzle type, and you move on from there. So it's really, and the other thing is your birds will let you know. Jack, you want to tell us what's going on here?
Okay, yeah, so this is a similar version of what we saw for those peafowl. Again, it's just a head of lettuce with uh, the leafy part cut off and then food items put inside the head of lettuce, and then mounted on a stainless steel skewer because, like we've told you guys, these green cheek conures are actually in the same mixed species aviary as those peafowl. They may not be inclined to go down to the ground when the peafowl are there because the peafowl can be a little bit scary because they're so much bigger than them. But just changing the placement of a basic item like this can change your animal's interaction with it immensely. So just think about things, having them raised up a little bit higher, the placement of certain items. If your animal has to reach or stretch for something, then we're getting into the how many different benefits are we looking at? We have the mental stimulation of foraging for food. We have the physical exertion of working a little bit harder, stretching for something. Here we have Rupert, the Bennett's wallaby, working with a browse holder. And so browse is just cuttings of edible plants that the animals are given to interact with. Here he has some bamboo. And you can see that I have it angled so it's up pretty high, even though he's not very tall. But you can see, oh, big stretch. He's going to reach for it. So that can be immensely rewarding for our animals as well.
And Terry says skewers are great. I think skewers are wonderful because you can use them for chewables. You can use them for shredding stuff. With the wallaby here, it's a shreddable and a foraging activity, and you can combine so much. Like with a skewer, you can put a foraging item, put some wood. Sometimes it's a matter of just taking a toy and inserting things in between two pieces of wood that are already on a toy. So there's just so many ways, and I mean, we're at an hour already. Obviously, foraging is something that, Jack and I could go on and on about, and we really do encourage you all to try different ways to do it. The biggest thing I think is, if it's a bird that's new to something, new to foraging, you need to work with them on how to do it. If it's a bird that is, a little hesitant to interact with things, to be a really high value reinforcer. And it's those kind of things to think about when you're starting out, when you're first doing it. If you've got a bird that is dead set against foraging, you just want to take and add things that make it easy to start with. And then they see, oh, this isn't so bad. I might do this again. Um, it's that gradual build.
So, Robin, I guess I would just ask, you're a parrot toy maker. I know people sometimes have inhibitions about getting started with foraging. Is there anything that you have or would recommend for anyone as a great introductory foraging toy?
Well, we have a whole line of foraging. We have a whole section on our Facebook page on our website that is dedicated strictly to foraging. But honestly, they can use any of them. But my suggestion would be that you start with something where it's just a matter of a little bit of movement. So here, the Great Foraging Kit is a great way to get started for people who haven't done any kind of foraging activities. And then things like the foraging rainbows. So those are, you just put stuff in the side, and it's really easy for the bird to see it. And then you gradually build up a little bit. You put some inside that tube that's there. Alicia says they love the Fiesta Forager. That is one of my favorites. And Terry had mentioned foraging Freddie, that she uses Freddie for babies, and a bunch of them can use them all at once. This is a Fiesta Forager, and with beaker, and you can see it's simple. The other piece of foraging is it's got to be simple for you to load it too. So if it's something that you've got to, get the screwdriver out and bend over sideways before you can reach around the corner to get this in, you're not going to do it. I mean, you might do it once because you paid a lot of money for it somewhere, but it's got to be easy for you too. And I think, we do talk a lot about having things be bird centered, but as bird caregivers, we want things to be a little bit easier for ourselves as well. So, it's got to be easy for you to load it up. And it's also got to be something that, your bird's going to be able, this guy is clearly going after this. It's like, yep, life is good, but there's clearly something in there. And with this one, you've got different types of opportunities. So the cups on the bottom have an opportunity. The little pot, I call them bean pots on the top, have a lid that slides off. And you can make that as tight or as loose as you want it, and you can build up the difficulty. The wicker ball, that's a great one for getting birds to the toy in the first place, and people too, if you want to play this as a party game. But you put their favorite thing in that wicker ball, and then they're going to come over and be like, whoa, this is kind of cool. So yeah, we do a lot of foraging. And in fact, you know what, Jack? I think don't we have a trivia question that
Oh,
the person
I think we do.
the person that gets tonight's trivia question is going to win themselves a Fiesta Forager, that toy that you see right there.
Awesome. So we have been expanding because, we in this video tonight, we showed you guys a couple of different animals. We love parrots, but we wanted to expand past parrots too because there's so many awesome things. So our trivia question tonight is not exactly parrots, but it is still awesome animal trivia. So the first person that can answer has the opportunity to win a Fiesta Forager. And so our question is, the Aztec god of war is known for wearing the feathers of a particular bird. What is that bird? And so if you guys have an answer, go ahead, type it, add it into the stream. The first person who comes up with the right answer will win the foraging toy. I'll give you guys a little bit of a hint that the Aztecs regarded this bird as one of the most aggressive birds they knew. And it was thought to be a reincarnation of fallen warriors. So, you definitely want to think of an aggressive, very assertive bird. And of course, you want to think of something that's going to be, sorry?
A parrotlet. Right. So we've got some ideas here. We've got pheasant, we've got peacock, quetzal, a phoenix. A hummingbird.
And the hummingbird is actually the answer. The Aztec god of war was known for having the feathers of a hummingbird. Um, and if you've never seen hummingbirds sparring at a hummingbird feeder, you may not think of them as being assertive, aggressive birds, but they definitely can stand their own.
Yeah, I was in New Mexico one time, and there was a flock of hummingbirds, and they can get super aggressive, and they're loud when they're being aggressive. It's kind of cool to see. It's pretty interesting. So, congratulations, Alicia. If you I know you already have a Fiesta Forager. If you would like another one, we can do that. If not, you can message me and we can, talk about alternatives. So congratulations. Good job. When we came up with this, Jack is the one that came up with this trivia question. And I was like, I don't know, big scary bird, cassowary. And he's like, Mexico. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Hummingbird was not one that came to mind right away, but it's a pretty good answer. Very good. Congratulations. So, for all of you that are sad now because Alicia won the Fiesta Forager, I will let you guys know that for the next week, so from now through next Friday, all foraging toys on the Leather Elf site will be 20% off. So anything in the foraging section is 20% off. The surprise skewer that was just up there, if you do a surprise skewer, you have the skewer for life. So Alicia's kids helped her with that. Nice. Connor, Aislinn, good job. Really proud of you. So yes, so all of our foraging toys at the Leather Elves are 20% off for the week. Just enter the code FORAGE, FORAGE, and you will get a deal on your foraging stuff. And then if you wanted to get a regular toy that you could modify, look at all you. I know you guys support the Leather Elves so much. I know you have toys that you can turn into foraging things. So just a little hint. Let's not forget about next. I could only think of Terror Bird. Oh,
The-
yep. It's
well,
a good guess.
and
I
when thinking about your toys, if you're sad that you missed out on the trivia question this week, don't forget that we also told you guys we're going to be running another contest throughout the week. So if you can submit your toys that were not initially foraging toys that you turned into foraging toys, take pictures, give us a description. You can put that over. Robin, you want that on the Leather Elves Facebook page, correct?
yeah, please on the Leather Elves Facebook page. I'll let Jack in on that, and we can. We will, like I said, we'll go to a top secret location and we will pick our favorite. But who knows? It might be another Fiesta Forager up for grabs there if you're creative enough. So, again, we so appreciate you guys and we appreciate your interaction. Up here on the screen is I am doing a talk next Saturday called Special Enrichment for Special Needs Birds. We Jack and I have been talking about some differences and how do you provide enrichment for that bird that might just need a little bit of extra help. This is brought to you by the folks that Bring You Parrot Festival, and we're working on some stuff for Parrot Festival this year virtually, but we've been doing a webinar every month, an online event. The price is right; it's $5. And you just need to, Jack, you want to tell people how they can sign up for that?
Yeah, so the website is going to be nprpf.wildapricot.org. But of course, if you don't remember that, just look for the NPRPF Parrot Festival group on Facebook, and that's going to have all the links that you need for any of the special events that the National Parrot Rescue and Preservation Foundation is doing. So I'm very, very excited about basically any of Robin's enrichment talks because as you guys are all here right now, I'm sure you can agree that they are all excellent. But the thought that goes into providing enrichment for special needs birds while also maintaining their safety and well-being, it's definitely a little more complicated. So I'm very, very excited for this session coming up.
It was kind of fun putting it together, because it's just trying to find that little bit different option for birds that need a little bit of modification for them. So yeah, hopefully I'll see some of you guys next Saturday. And we will see you hopefully next Friday. Next Friday, our topic is going to be the language of, here's Corey. I'll talk over Corey. Corey is one of my favorites. Corey won a contest when we first came out with the Great Foraging Experiment. Corey is a perfect example of sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But next week, we're going to be talking about the language of basic training. So we all want to, speak a common language and use some of the terms. And sometimes the terms can be a bit intimidating. Jack and I have talked. Jack, I'm sure you learned all the terms at one point or another.
So, way back when.
So long ago. And, we don't always use those terms when we're teaching people to train or when we're working with people on how to do training. And I think sometimes it's important that people know what some of those terms mean. And then we're going to talk about some of the very basics and things you can start out with if you're a novice trainer. And if you're not a novice, we'd love to have you join us and, put your 2 cents in on comments. And also, like I've said before, I always learn things when I, tune into different trainings, different webinars. And it's always nice to kind of have that refresher if you're not a novice in the training world. So Jack, anything else to add?
I do just want to thank everybody who is always a part of these live streams. You guys do make them so much fun. We do encourage you, if you want to share the information with any of your friends that have birds or any other animals, because a lot of this information is still going to be applicable to them as well, just make sure that you let them know so they're not missing out on any of the fun. Make sure that you like the Leather Elves Facebook page, because that's where we're doing all of the live streams. So that is going to be your key to making sure you don't miss out on any of the fun live streams that we're doing. Though, of course, if you are perhaps working late or you have a previously scheduled event, we do take all of the live streams and put them over on the Hi Redbird YouTube channel as well. So we definitely want to make sure that you guys don't miss out on any of that information. You can always let us know if there's anything in particular you guys really want to see, and maybe we can work that into our upcoming schedule. But once again, thank you guys so much for making this so much fun.
Take care, you guys, and have a great week. Thank you.
I do need to say thank you to my Patreon patrons for helping to make these videos possible. You can find out more by visiting Hi Redbird on Patreon or clicking the link in the description section down below if you would like more information. Thanks!